Three journalists at CNN had to resign in the wake of that retracted story on the Russia probe. Investigative Chief Lex Harris, reporter Thomas Frank, and assistant managing editor and Pulitzer Prize winner Eric Lichtblau. The president fired up his Twitter account. Wow, CNN had to retract big story on, quote, Russia with 3 employees forced to resign. What about all the other phony stories they do? Fake news. The story, as we reported last week, said that top Trump advisor Anthony Scaramucci, we'll hear from him later in the program, was under investigation over ties to a Russian investment fund and for having a secret meeting with an executive from the fund about lifting U.S. sanctions against Moscow. Scaramucci told me it was all a lie. Sharon Atkinson, how bad a mistake did CNN make in publishing this story, which had to be both retracted and prompted an apology to Scaramucci?
They never said if they thought it was false or just retracted because it was not second sourced, or did the source even exist. So I don't know a lot of detail, but I can tell you, hugely serious, especially for well-respected journalists from formerly well-respected organizations like CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post, to be making mistakes that wouldn't be allowed in journalism school. And I'm talking about not doing basic due diligence. And this is, I think, reflective of the larger picture in which many in the media publicly exempted themselves from the normal editorial rules because they said this president or the candidate as so dangerous. And this is what happens when you step back and say, this is different, we're not going to follow our normal rules.
Or just rushed onto web a story that was not ready and was very thin. And
but only because I think it was Donald Trump.
I see. This prompted a response in the press room, Molly Hemingway, from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's sort of working overtime this week. Here's what she had to say.
I think that we have gone to a place where if the media can't be trusted to report the news, then that's a dangerous place for America. You mentioned the Scaramucci story where they had to have reporters resign.
Molly.
Yeah, CNN said that this story failed to meet editorial standards, but I'm not entirely sure how this story was that different from many other stories that they have been running. And they have really been very intent on this Russia conspiracy story. They had the dossier story that they ran before vetting the dossier, which we've later turned out.
Well, CNN didn't publish the details of the dossier.
They didn't publish the details of the dossier,
BuzzFeed,
but
yeah.
they could have vetted and seen the accuracy of the dossier before running explosive headlines. They bizarrely claimed that the Susan Rice unmasking story was false when even she didn't deny it. They falsely claimed that James Comey was going to say that Donald Trump had not been told that he was not under investigation, when in fact his testimony revealed that he was. There are so many stories with a pattern of getting things wrong when you're using anonymous sources, no accountability when those anonymous sources turn out to have misled or whatnot. So this is part of a pattern.
Although in this case, Ray Suarez, there was accountability in this sense. Jeff Zucker, the president of the network, showed that he took the matter very seriously by taking the story down, retracting it, apologizing, and 3 journalists involved no longer have jobs. Some people said maybe that went too far. So did CNN at least mitigate the damage by taking those steps?
The bigger the scalp, the higher the risk. And when CNN was trying to reach inside Trump's inner circle to take a scalp, if you're wrong, you tumble a long way. The system worked. They retracted, they apologized, and they fired 3 people. They
in effect, yes.
Yeah, but they're not being transparent about what happened in the same way they weren't transparent about what happened with the Comey story. For the day leading up to the testimony, they had over and over and over again the claim that he would refute Donald Trump's claim that he had been told 3 times he wasn't under investigation. In fact, under oath, that's precisely what he did. And they didn't explain what happened there. We don't know what...
ABC made the same mistake. But here's the thing on this retraction story. There's been no coverage on the air on CNN of this, no coverage on the air by MSNBC, except some fleeting mentions after Sarah Huckabee Sanders denounced CNN, but didn't get into the substance of the way in which Anthony Scaramucci had been defamed. What do you make of that?
Right. The way to restore trust, then, is to be completely transparent and be upfront about it, and that is difficult. I mean, good journalists make mistakes. We've all seen it. Every media outlet does it. You just have to take accountability.
Cheryl, quick thought?
I don't think this is a case of good journalists making a mistake, because I think some of the mistakes are so rookie in nature that it's the kind of sloppiness that, as I said, wouldn't be allowed in journalism school, that speaks to something different.
Well, are they rookie mistakes when you have, as one of these 3, a Pulitzer Prize winner who had worked for the New York Times, or is it a problem of lack of oversight, or is it a problem of, as you were saying earlier, or as Molly was suggesting, that the standards somehow are bent a little bit because of the media animosity toward this president?
All of the above. I mean, the idea that that slipped on the air in the first place, those reporters should have known better. When I was at CBS and when I was at CNN, like you were, that kind of story would never have been able to air. I'm not sure why it was allowed to.
The hoops you used to have to jump through were far more numerous once upon a time. A lot of places have been emptied out, with editors and producers, gatekeepers being fired.
There is that, and there is also the question of how this person is covered. Cheryl, we'll see you a little later in the program. Ahead, Sarah Palin suing the New York Times for reviving a 6-year-old smear, but can she win that lawsuit? Up next, a reporter's rant in the White House press room brings him all kinds of attention. But does criticizing the media really amount to bullying?